All right. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Kettlebell Corner. I'm Jeremiah Whalen here with Roger Parks. And today, our special guest coach is Bill ESCH. He's the kettlebell warrior. You may know him from such accolades as the first male to achieve Master Sport International class outside of Russia. I can't believe it. It really happened. I don't know when it happened, if it was the 80s or not, who knows? He's definitely a man who can wield a kettlebell. Bill, welcome. And thanks for coming on. Tell us a little bit about yourself real quick.
First off, thanks for having me. I really appreciate this. I obviously am into kettlebells, so it's fun to geek out with everyone about this, everybody that's into it, because there's a big crowd, but it's not as, it's not as common as like marathoning, maybe. I don't know. So
forever common that is.
Like-minded people. It's great. So I guess my quick synopsis of history into weightlifting. When I was 12, I started working in a gym and cleaning the gym to work out there. And the guy that owned the gym had qualified for the '84 Olympics, but had broke his neck on a snatch, so he didn't get to go. And he's fully functioning. He just fractured a vertebrae. He wasn't paraplegic or anything, but he taught me to Olympic weightlift. So I learned to snatch and clean and jerk before I learned to bench press. And so in that, I really got into weightlifting sport. So what you see in the Olympics, and competed up through college. I had started that because I was into other sports, football, soccer, track. And I ended up walking on and practicing, let's be real specific, practicing football down at Lincoln. But it was cool because they had an awesome weight room. And I was super into weightlifting. And so it worked out for me that way. I had to show up to practices, but I got to use their weight room. I was basically a live tackle dummy. And but Olympic weightlifting is really what turned me on to it, because Olympic weightlifting is a lot different than powerlifting. It's a lot about rhythm, timing, speed, and it's not just your rate of pull and acceleration and all that. It's not just a straight acceleration, right? There's different rhythms to it, especially when you get to different weights. And so this was very intriguing to me. And that same gym that I was at, it actually specialized in rehab. And so we got a lot of doctors referring us back patients, knee patients, things like that. And so then I got into all these other modalities. So currently, I work at Lifetime Fitness, and I was the head of the Pilates. I was the director of the Pilates program there. So it is a very varied fitness existence. And I had my own gym for 10 years, and just have really always been into this, and super into kind of all the nuances and aspects, and different techniques that people pull, and what tools they use, and then how they maybe use that tool for a different purpose and things like that. So that's kind of, I guess then I kind of forgot the kettlebell part.
What are we here for?
Oh, wait, why are you talking to me? So
we like Nebraska football and all.
Football, yeah. Not right now, but they're not. I'm still a fan. They're just not. They're not as strong as they used to be. Anyways, when I had my gym, this is probably back in 2007. I was scrolling around on YouTube, and I was interested in kettlebells, and so I'm like, oh, should I get into RKC, or should I get into I was trying to figure it out, and I came across Ivan Denisov doing the long cycle, and I'm pretty sure I was watching his the world record, and I think it still stands today. So it's the absolute world record of 120 reps in 10 minutes with 232 kilo bells. But I remember watching it and going, holy shit, that's Olympic endurance, Olympic weightlifting. And I'm naturally prone to be more of an endurance athlete than I am a power athlete. even though I've trained it, like Olympic weightlifting is a power sport, but my propensity is like when I ran like the 400, the 800, the mile, and this is an endurance sport, and it's an endurance tool. Like at the end of the day, because the weight stays essentially the same. And so I remember watching that and being like, I want to learn that. I think I'd be okay at it. I want to learn it. So I looked up Steve Cotter. He runs the IKFF, which is the International Kettlebell and Fitness Federation. And I called him up, and I spent like a week, maybe a little longer, working with him. I went out to California, and he's like, you know what, you should go. We're going to have nationals here. And this was, in summer of like, it was either 08 or 07 sometime. And basically right at the beginning of the new year was I think it was February. They had nationals in 09. And so I went down and I competed with 224s, and I was hooked. So that's kind of, and I competed specifically in long cycle. So when you look at like kettlebell sport, there's traditionally 3 events. And so the first is the biathlon. And that's actually, historically, that's the first event, the biathlon is, which is the snatch and the jerk. And over time, as they started to lay in rules to it, they're 10-minute events with at least, I think, a half-hour separation between those two. So like you'd come out, you'd first compete in the snatch, and like at a professional level, you'll lift with 32 kilogram bells. And so you'll do you have one hand switch, and if you set the bell down, you're done. And then you rest 30 minutes and you go into the jerk, and you jerk the 32 kilogram bells for 10 minutes. I compete in the long cycle, which is one event, and you compete, it's 10 minutes, and you clean and jerk 32 kilogram bells for 10 minutes. And so
that sounds like some hefty work.
Yes, it is. It's crazy amount of work. And it is an infinitely different way of using the bell than like hardstyle does. And so it's really interesting. Like if you look at like the history of like modern kettlebell sport, it actually started with that Dr. Vio Krivesky back in like 1885. He opened up the amateur athletics club for strongmen in St. Petersburg, Russia. And by about like 1916, I think came out like the first book on how to do like how to use kettlebells for strength. But in that same club also developed Olympic weightlifting. And so if you look at them, the sport is you have your power arm of weightlifting, and you have your endurance, like power endurance arm. And that was kettlebell sport. And so they're kind of like, as you get into those sports, they're super similar. It's just one is done for one rep, right? You have basically 3 attempts at the snatch and 3 attempts at the clean and jerk. And this one is 10 minutes, and it's or whenever you set the bells down, you're done. And so it's kind of fascinating to look at it historically from that standpoint, because in many aspects, they're really similar. And yet they're also, it's like one is the sprint and one is the mile.
Yeah, I guess that makes tons of sense. In looking at it side by side, you can definitely see that for sure. Parallel paths, but different end result.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's pretty cool. I think something that's very interesting about kettlebells and when you talk about the endurance and the long cycle, and when it comes to like the hardstyle snatch test and these sorts of things, it's always about like, it's a gruel, it's a grind. There's so much that goes into it. I think, we put a lot of importance on breath and like the breathing through these things. Can you clarify like what kind of breathing you use and what you do through the long cycle, and how you might think somebody could have a good breathing pattern to help make that snatch test in the hardstyle. Are you familiar with the snatch test in the hardstyle, first of all?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
And how that would how you could kind of guide people by using some of those techniques from sport to carry over into that snatch test.
Right. So first is going to be actually like the first thing I would like talk about is the grip. So when you grab the bell, you're trying to actually get it into the extensors of the hand, and you don't want it in the forearm. Too often everybody like attacks it and they grip it down, but you want to hold it like it's a suitcase and lock it into those extensors, and then lock the thumb around the index and finger. And so a lot of what happens then is you can get this super straight line and full extension of the fascial system of the arm. So when you fully extend the arm all the way through, you'll get a better connection into the rest of your body. And that using that grip saves your forearms, because that a lot of times just burns people out. And traditionally in sport, we spend a lot of time talking about being relaxed. And so it's a lot about taking the slack out of your body and not necessarily as much about getting tight. And it's in the same concept that you wouldn't necessarily like go tell a sprinter to get super tight before he runs a sprint, but you want them stacked. Like you don't want them like, looking like they're Napoleon Dynamite on a horse, right? Like where they have no control of where their spine is at. And so it's this fine line of like creating this relaxed tension. When it comes to breathing, I'm gonna have to stand and think about this for a second. I should know this right off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But like
stand up, feel it out.
You're gonna have, so once you hike the bell back, there's a breath going into the backswing. So you would exhale, and you only focus on exhales. And so really like in the long cycle, I only count breaths, and the breath dictates pace. And a lot of times people want to rush it. Like they're just like, because you have to get 100 snatches right in 5 minutes with a 24 or a 32.
Yeah.
Depends on how much you weigh.
Yeah, but ultimately probably 24.
Okay. So there's definitely going to be a pace to that over the course of 5 minutes. And classically in sport, you don't switch hands, but you can obviously switch hands as many times as you want. But you're going to exhale back. You're going to exhale on the acceleration pull. You're going to exhale on the insertion, and either if you under squat or if you carry up top. You'll exhale on the drop, exhale into the backswing, exhale into the acceleration pull, exhale overhead. And what it does is that you just keep your breath moving. You can apply these same principles. So like a lot of like CrossFitters and burpees, or even with burpees, like every time there's a bend of a joint, so your chest goes to the ground, you pop yourself up, you exhale when you jump, you exhale when you land, you exhale, because it keeps the breath moving. And now you're not like, you're never holding your breath. And like nothing will fatigue you faster than holding your breath. And that makes such a difference. And so, I can speak much. I mean, I'm decent at the snatch, but the long cycle, it's crucial. And what happens is focusing so hard on that breath puts you, it's really interesting, because like kettlebell sport is literally, it's the reason they use it as a military sport is because what it's going to do, it's going to, it's how much work can you do under duress? That's the test. And so the key is really focusing in on the very what's most important. So narrowing that down, and your breath is the most important, because once you lose that, it's a ticking time bomb for when you're done. And so like being able to keep a pace, especially with like work things, so like work capacity things, it makes a world of difference by being able to keep that going and being able to only exert the energy that is needed. Is that on my end, or is that
it's not here? I'm the only one here. Roger, you got somebody at your house?
There we go.
All right. Roger.
Sorry.
Roger has a visitor who's helping us with it. He's breathing out of his mouth hole.
No, I'm sorry. I could hear. I didn't. I was thinking. I was like, God, is that someone in my house talking? And sorry. But that breath control is enormous. So even on like, what is it like Karen, like in CrossFit when they do the wall balls, like the 100 wall balls, 20-pound ball, 150, something like that, straight. Well, if you get your breath down, you should be able to do them unbroken and keep a pace. And so for long cycle, breath keeps your pace. So like you have a backswing breath, you have a catch in the rack. And we can talk about that because that confuses the hell out of people because they're always like, you're going to break your back. But you have a breath in the rack and this is your rest position. And so you can take, right? Like I know if I take one breath and then go into a jerk, that I'm going to hit like probably about 8 to 9 reps a minute. If I alternate it where I go one breath in the rack and then the next round do 2 breaths in the rack, it's going to put me at like 6 to 7 reps per minute. And so when you start focusing on something as simple as the breath and that holding your pace, it's going to keep you moving and kind of allow you to really chunk things down. Because in those like, really long, arduous tasks, right? Like the 100 snatches in 5 minutes, being able to chunk and get things down where it's like, oh, good, I got that. Okay. You can start doing that negotiation of like, all right, just get one more, or just all right, you got to get your breath here. Okay, good. All right, now you did that. Now hit your next breath, which is going to be the dip and then into the jerk and into the catch and so forth, or into the snatch overhead. And you can start breaking it down into smaller pieces of which mentally are so much easier to handle.
Got it. As far as like when you go into into these different positions in kettlebell sport, and like I already think I prefaced that we mostly do hardstyle, and Roger conveniently told me that we only do hardstyle. So if I ask you some simple questions, please forgive me. But when you're doing this long cycle and you're talking about the breathing points, are you like taking moments and resting there and essentially catching your breath, or are you just going, is it a one fluid thing for you?
Well, yeah, I mean, just go with, yes, you're depending upon your pace, but you are always taking those breaths. There's never a point, no matter how fast you're going, you're not going to skip a breath, because it's just like, as you start to like lactic acid builds so fast. And you are trying to just like dispose of carbon dioxide, basically, right? And so it's just, and then depending upon your pace, maybe you do 2 breaths here. But a lot of it is to be able to hold a consistent pace and to commit to the pace. So like Dennis Vasiliev, who is the 85 kilo, world champ for like 10 years straight, and holds like he's 85 kilos. And he's done 100 reps in 10 minutes with 232s, which is insane. Like he will often talk about just committing to the pace, but to be able to do that, you have to be on that breath.
So I've got a question about, a lot of the podcast we mentioned earlier, you talked a lot about mental toughness. Do you have any tips or things that you would recommend to cultivate those skills? Because I mean, when you're moving for 10 minutes, especially with that kind of load, it gets challenging. How do you accommodate that mentally?
That's a great question. Chunking is really key. And going back to the breath, so you'll hit, what's crazy is, so I mean, obviously all these things take practice, like anything else. Mental toughness takes practice. And the thing with like mental toughness is that, and we'll just say kettlebell sport, is that you're adapting yourself to the pain, right? Or like to how much it hurts or what that sensation is. I don't even want to call it pain. I want to call it a sensation. and then being okay with it. I remember watching like Sergey Merkelin, who's a 12-time world champion in the 77 kilo class. And I remember his nothing changes for 10 minutes. Nothing. The guy is a machine. He's masterful. And I remember watching him and being like, holy shit, this guy's like, he's got ice in his veins. Like he is the definition of like just a Russian assassin. Right. And then I met him, and the guy like couldn't be like sweeter or like more jovial. And he's like kind of soft spoken and really kind. And I was like, that is not what I saw on the platform. But so much of it was this guy had such control of his thoughts, right? Like, cause there's in your head at every, like after, typically it's 3 minutes is when, for me, is like typically when like thoughts start creeping in of like, are you going to make it? Right? Like, are you going to, and you have to wash them out because those thoughts don't do you any good. You have to learn to like you can recognize it and then get rid of it. And then you go back to your breath. And this is why breathing is so important. My best sets are when I'm almost in this like Zen state of where I'm solely focused on the breath and things kind of dissolve. And there was in 2014, the world championships were held in California. This is when I set the American record. And I remember like at 7 minutes looking up and like seeing the crowd in front of me and like being like, oh shit, I only got 3 minutes left. Like that, the first 7 minutes had like washed away. And I was so focused just on my breath and my count and my breath and just thinking about that breath and hitting those points and really letting go of everything else. And that's a lot of mental toughness is in your head, letting those like everybody, I mean, like as pain starts to kick on, you're like, I'm not going to make it. Like that doesn't do you any good. Get rid of it. And you have to like file down your thoughts to like the only thing that's important. And really at the end of the day, the only thing is that important is that you're standing up, you're holding the bells, and that you're breathing. And if you can just focus on the breathing, the rest will come. And so to develop that, you start off and, I'll start people off with like 30-second sets, right? And maybe we'll give a minute rest and we'll kind of put them together. And then you build up to a minute set, and then you build up to 2 minutes, and you're trying to hold paces and different paces for different reasons. So one, just to get them to understand that they can stand there with the bells. I mean, so even like a rack hold for 2 minutes with 32 kilo bells that's a lot, right? But you have to learn how to relax into it. And you have to learn how to let your elbows sink into your hips. And at the same time, keep like your legs locked out. Essentially we'll say locked out, but basically to the point where your quads are relaxed so that you can give your quads a break. But it all comes down to breathing and letting that tension go. Because if you start breathing too heavy in the chest, you'll start pulling out of your scalenes, and then it starts to elevate your shoulders. And now you're starting to like roll forward more as opposed to being really tall and having a long neck and the bells resting low on the hips. And that opens up again your breath pathway, and it'll allow you to breathe a little more into your stomach. Even though your bells are resting on your side, you're still breathing into it. And so that type of like of focus and chunking it down to the most important points is really key.
What happens? What do you do if you start to lose that rhythm in the breath? And do you just pause and reset it, or I mean, like, how are you gaining that back? I'm sure it's happened to you at some point,
Yeah, a lot. That's essentially. You get back to your rack, and I'll get back to my rack and I'll take whatever the breaths it is that I need. And most of the time it is that you can, and that you have to get back on it. Like, get back to your pace, get back to your pace and focus. Like, don't it's a lot of just like getting rid of the other thoughts of the possibilities of being able to exit. Like, because if it's that what is the Think and Grow Rich book, right? I think have you ever read that by Napoleon Hill?
Yeah.
Think and Grow Rich. I mean, I think most of us have. And he has that, like, you have to burn the bridges. Like you have to burn the ship once you hit land, because there's no retreating. And that was there was a Rashinsky was his name, Sergei Rashinsky, and he was a long cycler, and he was a guy that I'd learned from, had the opportunity to learn from. And his this dude, he collapsed. I can't tell you how many times on the platform, because like he just that there was no other option. There was no other option. It was either you finish or you collapse, and that's it. You don't set them down.
It's hardcore.
It's super hardcore. But once you understand the breathing, once you get that down, like you go, oh shit, this is how it's done. And then it starts to make a lot more sense. But like when you first watch it, you're like, or at least when I first watched it, I was like, how? Like, I mean, the first time I ever tried to do 32s, like long cycle continuously, I did 10 reps. And 11
in 10 minutes?
No, like in like a minute and a half. But that's all. Like I was just trying to see how many I could get.
Right. Yeah. I often do that. It's harder than you think.
It's way harder than you think. You're like, how can I do? And it, and like, and understand, like I just watched a ton of videos and I was like, I'm Olympic weightlifter. I know how to do this. Like, I'll get this. And I got like 10 reps and like was smoked. And I was like, okay, there's something that I'm missing here.
Yeah. It turns out you just got to breathe a little bit, right?
Yeah. You really do.
I've got a question about some of the rest of your training and breathing incorporate. Or I've got a breathing question that follows. How much of your training is sport style? How much of it is, kind of traditional weightlifting, and how much of it is just doing crazy shit on Instagram? Because you've got, when you look at your page, there are a variety of modalities, and it's really easy to look. I mean, the first time I came across your profile, I was like, oh, that's the guy who's always doing the weird shit and flipping the bells around. But then when you start digging in, there's some hardcore. You got a double 28 pistol squat posted. You're talking about doing some pretty traditional stuff. How do you split up your training is one question. And I guess two is, do you incorporate your breathing patterns into some, let's call it less conventional training? The breathing you learn from sport, do you carry that over?
Well, yeah, a bit. That's a great question. It changes, right? Like, so, I deadlift. I still like do Olympic weightlifting. I mean, so Instagram for me in general is that the kettlebell a lot of times is, so like with Strong First, they use a lot of powerlifting principles, which is great. Like, it's not like, I'm all for it. And I use those all the time. But on that opposite end, with that tool, it is this incredible, like, kinetic tool. And so a lot of what I'm trying to demo is that there is a vast world out there for this tool to be used, and maybe ways that people hadn't thought. And I want to kind of like basically challenge their thinking on how that, like, oh, I could use this like this as well. And so in those multiple different planes that I use it in, like the crossbody snatches to lunges and things like that, I'm using a lot of sport style breathing. So if there's a flow and a rhythm to it, like like where it's not like I'm not doing like a ton of, I'm not doing what would be like traditional strength training. I'm doing just a lot of like what I consider like work capacity type training, like conditioning. I use that breath. Now, if I'm doing strength training, which I strength train, and I strength train with bells and barbells and all types of stuff, I will very much so use like, again, depending upon the load and the lift, you know, like your bearing down breath, right? Where you're going to exhale, drop your ribs, and then inhale, drop your diaphragm down, and, you know, basically have that resistance against the abdominal wall and TVA to excite basically like the thoracolumbar fascia, which then ties into everything else, to, you know, get into those squats and to like reach to the lats and practice that whole getting tight and creating a very tense, strong body. And if I'm doing it for like, you know, 12 reps or whatever, or 5 reps, or I'm using that real traditional style breath. It's just, I look at this stuff as just having more tools in your toolbox. But yeah, I do lots of other types of lifting. I mean, I do like the crux of most of my exercise is Pilates. That's what I do like the most of.
Nobody would guess that. And I was like so surprised when I heard that, to be honest. I was like, oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah. And it's awesome because so much of it is, I look at it from a state. So I look at it slightly differently, but like similar. I use it when you think about human movement. No one taught us to be bipedular or bipedal, right? And it's hardwired into your system. And so when you watch developmentally, kids learn to move or learn to walk, they start off and the first thing they do is breathe. And they naturally drop their diaphragm. That's why you watch their bellies move up and down when they're breathing in the crib or whatever. And then eventually they go into right away, they go into global flexion where they're like happy babying, they're grabbing their feet, they're crunching up. I mean, if you try and mimic what a child does, like you get next to an infant, like your abs are fried, like just fried, but they're building that core stability. And then what they do is they roll. And so when they roll and learn to roll, they start developing right, left side brain coordination, right? Then we go into global extension, we press up, we swim, we push ourselves back into a seated position, and sitting teaches us to separate our spine from our hips and our femurs also from our hips. And then we crawl, and then we come to a squat, pull ourselves to a stand, and then you get into all types of gait movement. And so Pilates really, I mean, like there's standing work that you do, but like the real crux of like, if you look at most traditional mat work, is that it's on your back, it's rolling, it's doing all these things where you're making sure that your spine is super mobile and that you have this ability to move. And it's paid off for me so much because so much of like in the long cycle and the jerk portion of it, you have this deep, like from here, like once you drive the hips up, you're popping the chest towards the ceiling. So you're creating this extension, and you need this thoracic extension of being able to not extend through the low back, but actually almost reverse the C curve of the thoracic spine as you drive those bells up, and then you can land underneath them in a full locked out position overhead. So that's really why I use that modality. And when I say, I mean, I train, I'm a trainer during the day. So, and I teach a lot of Pilates during the day. So inevitably I do a lot of it, but even in like my programming, everybody's doing 15 to 20 minutes every time because it's a catch-all. Like if you weren't born with a congenital issue, then we can probably correct whatever shoulder issues have going on by going back to those, I think it's like 6 or 7 base movements. And you can get a lot of feedback from the floor about like where your spine is, where your hips are, where when you extend, what type of core engagement you need when you extend your legs. You know, like if you look at like a happy baby where you grab like both feet and curl it up and down, essentially you're prepping yourself for a squat, right? You're prepping that type of mobility. And you start to tie all those things together. And so you're just taking these shapes and putting them in different places, in different planes, and playing with them.
Awesome. I was actually curious because you had kind of alluded to this before, and you know, and it's sort of a common thing amongst people that begin using the kettlebell, whether it's hard style or sports style or something just as like factored into their regular programming. what do you look for as far as somebody's readiness, and what are you kind of giving them for like beginners that come to you, or somebody that's looking to start, something to do to be like, hey, if you are working these sorts of movements, this will help you become more ready and build confidence so that you don't feel like you're going to blow your back out?
Well, so Pilates, right? I start with that, and I have like a basic thing. So like, if you go to my Instagram, you can click on the link, and there's like a 7-day deal, and it has the beginner Pilates stuff in it. And that's kind of like my, like, I literally, like, I don't want to say I blindly use that with everybody, but like it's literally like, we're going to go through that. Then when it comes to like kettlebell stuff, like I teach the RKC swing. I teach the goblet squat, deadlift, right? And practicing all those hinging mechanics, because that's going to be the biggest thing, and then there's a ton of different ways to go about, trying to like box people in so that they're in the right position. One of my favorite ways to get someone to swing correctly is to have them learn the swing by setting up get a bench, and you want it basically, most benches, like I'm 5'9", so they'll set at about like my calf height, and I'll take the bell. And so if this is the handle of the bell, I'll angle it slightly, and I'll have them start off on the bench so the hands are super tight to the hips, and then drive the swing from out there, make it come back between the legs, and set it back on the bench. It does a number of things. One, the swing is infinitely different than the deadlift. They both require a hinge, but because of the kinetics of the bell coming back into you, you have different force requirements on the torso. And so you have to wait for that bell to come into the hips, right? So that you can then drive from the hips and then drive your body, up, push the ground away. But a lot of times people, first with the swing, like they will inevitably let the bell get too close to the ground, and it'll be too far away from their center. And so that's one of my simplest drills to have people start with, to learn how to do it. Then eventually, once you start, you have the, where they started it from the backswing, they drive it up, they set it back on the bench. They do that a few times. And then we start from the backswing, and then we just miss the bench each time, and we go into the swing. Because if they knock the bench over, they know they weren't keeping it tight enough. And it also will teach them they have to keep a long spine. But otherwise, it's impossible. And so you narrow that distance of which they don't have a choice. And so those are a few of the things. I mean, there's like your pressing, right? Like, I always like starting off pressing movement, being able to do a push-up correctly. Pull-ups are huge. But I mean, it's starting off with the very basically nothing that you see on my Instagram.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah.
I've got a question about the swing. So when you say you teach an RKC swing, are you talking about more of a hardstyle swing?
Yeah. Okay. So starting off, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Because I feel like it's, for almost everyone, it's much easier to comprehend.
Can you get into some of the differences between the hardstyle swing, the pendulum swing? Even going back to the previous question I asked about, moving in multiple planes, it seems that there's a lot more global engagement. There's a lot of elasticity of tendons and making sure things are linked, which is different than hardstyle in terms of how you generate force. We've got different paths, the length of the moment arms and all the different angles of rotation. Can you get into some of those differences between the two swings?
Yeah, I mean, so the pendulum swing is traditionally done with one hand. And like similar, I mean, because basically it's setting up the snatch or the single arm clean. And so really the objective is to keep it into the center of your body as much as possible. And you're going to use that natural stretch reflex out of the hips. So in the pendulum swing, instead of loading back into your glutes, kind of like where you're keeping the knees bent, you're actually following the arc of the swing with your hips to the top. And then you're driving like back down and through. So like there's this like twerk almost, if you will, right? Like, I mean, but you have to ride the bell. You got to ride your arm and ride the bell. And then when you extend up, there's always like a countering of the bell to a certain degree. And so with this, like when you come out of it, no one can see me, it doesn't matter. When you come out of it, like you actually, so you're hitting, there's like this moment where you're going to hit like a saddle position where, like, if you look at it in Olympic lifting, it's the scoop. So it's right before they're pulling the bar into the hips and they're going to explode up and extend through those hips so they can get a vertical path of the bar. You're doing a similar deal in Olympic weightlifting. It's just, or in kettlebell lifting, it's just slower. You have to wait for it more. So there ends up, it's right when you get to the acceleration pull, you're starting to push back. And so like with a single arm swing, a lot of times like you're like basically keeping the hands level, right? And you're trying to stay tight in here. Well, for us, what we're trying to do is we're using this oblique and rotation, and we're driving the bell hand shoulder back. And this hand could touch the bottom of the bell. And you're doing that, and you're trying to keep a pretty straight arm so that you are then keeping that bell in the center of mass. And you don't, the other thing is like with like, if we're, I know we're talking about a swing, but if we're talking about like a snatch, because that's essentially what we're using in kettlebell sport, you're using the swing for, is you are then going to the bell, doesn't move. It doesn't flip over this way. The handle actually is always what's going up. So the bell rotates and then it spins back, and you're using this rotating motion. So your head is almost always over one hip or the other, but there's a lot of like oblique action that's happening here. And it's actually very similar to like running, that you would like drive and double down with like that, with that run as you drop through. And so it ends up being much more similar to almost a running pattern than this, like, we're trying to like counter rotation. We're trying to like get rotation and actually get that shift of weight, but yet still keep this tall spine as you keep that bell in that center line. And so that pendulum, that's what it comes down to. And then as you get it, as you refine it even more, a lot of times you'll just practice the back end of the swing, because in that back end of the swing is where you'll end up losing a lot of grip strength. And you want to make sure that bell stays still. Like you don't lose the momentum of the bell, that you're constantly like basically using kinetics to drive more kinetics, to drive more speed. And so it's kind of like, you know, if you like spin a wheel and then you spin it again, you spin it again, and spin it, and it just keeps going. That's what you're essentially trying to do, is like take that momentum and then regenerate and create more power. And to do that, a lot of it just has to do with taking slack out of the body, being able to load and use the rotational force to then spin the bell overhead, if that kind of makes sense. And so there's even like as you get into it, there might be like a shift of weight from foot to foot. But again, that's like a more advanced way of like looking at it. And, you know, I mean, it definitely wouldn't be a way that I would start off with like a student. Like we kind of build into that as they get like the basics of just, you know, your most basic concepts down of swinging the bell. Because it's super, especially like moving a weight, you know, where you're tossing it. It doesn't matter if you're doing Olympic weightlifting or kettlebell or hardstyle, like throwing a weight out in the air and still hanging on to it is intimidating.
Yeah, for sure. Now, just so I can really make sure I get this down.
Yeah.
Would you say as a somewhat universal, at least in, let's say, the snatch, would you say it is an objective of kettlebell sport to find length, to find as much movement from all of the various parts as you possibly can? So for example, with a hardstyle snatch, especially recently, there's a big movement for a low pull. You want to keep the arm as close to the body as possible. Some people have a slightly longer arm, whereas kettlebell sport, you know, you're going to get that arm out, even though you're leaning behind that line of gravity.
Yeah.
It seems like you're looking for length in your body to kind of ride one passive tension, but in the fascia and the tendons, and also make sure you're getting, when you get down to the physics of it, you're actually getting more momentum, even though it's a bit slower. You're losing speed, but you're gaining momentum. Would you say that's accurate?
Relatively, but the thing is you're not really losing speed as much. It's you will like, it feels like you are, but like with the numbers that are being produced, you're not. And so it so much has to do with learning how to deflect and keeping that weight close to your center of mass, which is kind of a principle of all weightlifting, is how close. And so to do that, it's by keeping those long arms or those basically, long leverage points, right? So that you can turn it over, that you get the bell to spin and turn faster and get under it, if you will, but that pulling of center of mass, like, so even if like you're pulling here and punching through by keeping it's going to be a very similar idea.
Okay, no, that makes a lot of sense. How long does your snatch take? How many seconds
does it take to get overhead?
Yeah, just 1 or maybe 5, just as a general reference point.
Well, to be honest, I don't know if I can speak to that exactly, but I can hit like with a 24. If you're to give me an all-out sprint, I can probably do. We'll have to do the math. Probably. I know for. Yeah, that's a great question. I'm trying to think in a snatch what I've hit all out in a minute. I'm pretty sure I could hit at least, looking at in the maybe like 33, something like that, 34 in a minute with a 24, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, that would probably be about what I'm gonna do. I don't know. I could test it and find out.
Let's go.
Done it.
Tag us on that, okay?
I will.
We'll do the same though, okay? In fairness, we'll do the same.
All right. So there's some interesting guys that you follow on Instagram that are sport guys. Ivan Markov is his name, and he's the most recent he's kind of this up and coming and won a number of world championships lately. This dude's amazing. He's a biathlon guy and he snatches. Alexander Kostov. So I watched him snatch 100 reps in 10 minutes in 2014 with a 40 kilo bell, and he's like 60 some kilos. And so he just posted something the other day with him snatching a 40 kilo. And so understand that's only one hand switch. And so he's producing a ton of power at a very low body weight, but it has to do again with his paths and his breathing. And what's crazy is when you watch him, there is I'm exaggerating, doing all these things. When you watch them, they almost don't look like they're moving much. And that's what's kind of crazy to in my mind to get, is that, but they're just super efficient at they'll ride those points to that point, and it's so smooth. The transition at the bottom has so little movement that they then produce that same power back and reflect it back overhead. It's super interesting to watch. And I know Alexander just posted something the other day that was just God, dude, it's super impressive.
I'd have one more snatch question for me, I promise.
Yeah.
Out of curiosity, and there's no right or wrong answer to this.
Yeah.
Have you done hardstyle snatch test, like the 5-minute and 100 snatches in 5 minutes before?
Yeah.
How did you think it was easy or hard?
I mean, with the hand switch,
whatever.
Yeah, with the hand switch, it's definitely achievable.
Okay.
It's really, it's not switching hands makes shit infinitely harder.
Oh yeah. Don't I know?
like infinitely harder. And so I had done a bunch of sports stuff. And so once I had done that, it's a world of difference. Now understand there's also like using an overhand grip on it, like that changes things too, right? Like using an overhand grip, not using a pendulum, not using, right? Like I used sports style when I did it.
Yeah.
And so that makes it definitely makes a difference in with what type of ease you get the bell over the head.
Say somebody wants to start some kettlebell sport. Where are you sending them first?
That's a great question. So, I mean, there's a lot of great instructors. Like Steve Cotter is a great instructor and is one of the guys that really pioneered bringing it into the US. There's I mean, like if you're living in a specific area, there's like I can usually spot people and tell you where to go. Like if you're in New York, go find Carter Berry. He's the best American lifter, especially in biathlon. Come up. The guy's his technique is flawless, and he's a great coach. I'm trying to think of online programs that people have that are like specific to that. And I know there's a number of online coaches. Texas Kettlebell Club. He's a great coach down there. If you're in California, there's Dennis Vasilov out there, John Buckley, Jason Dolby, Kettlebell Kings. I think they might have a few good resources just on kettlebell sport. I just started a kettlebell sport program. It's not done. It won't be done for a couple months, but I'll be kicking one out soon.
But essentially then you, right?
right. Then I'm the only one.
Let's just start with the top. Okay.
Right. But there's a ton of guys. There are a lot of guys around that are really good coaches.
All right. I have a follow-up to that real quick.
Yeah.
What if somebody's interested in getting into that kettlebell sport world? Are you having them start with clean and jerk or just jerks or the snatch or where are they? What's like a jump off point for somebody who's like, hey, I have a couple of kettlebells or a kettlebell and I wanted to mix it up a bit?
So the snatch is always a great spot to start because you can at this point, like almost every competition has like a snatch only event, a jerk only event. They have 5-minute events. They have so a lot of times I start people off with 5-minute. They have long cycles in there. I mean, you could do the triathlon where you do all 3 events. But a lot of times, like the snatch is such a great spot to start because for numerous reasons. One, the snatch and the principles of the snatch and getting it overhead and that learning of pulling, basically swinging and pulling the bell and getting it. It's it's comfortable for most people, and if they're interested, they have at least been doing like a hardstyle snatch, and so then tweaking mechanics from there isn't nearly as big of a deal. When you get into the clean and jerk or like the long cycle or even the jerk, it gets a lot different because so with like the hardstyle jerk, you're going to have the bells up by the shoulders and you're going to jerk them overhead. This is it's done very much in the same vein that you would do with a barbell, but with sport and with the kettlebell in general, you can take the middleman out and you basically are, because essentially you're always trying to take the power from the legs and the hips and drive it overhead. Well, in kettlebell sport, what you do is you're connecting the weight of the bell to the hip, and there's essentially like your back's actually relaxed. And it's so funny. I used to get so much hate about how terrible of a kettlebell lifter I was from people I didn't know, like kettlebell sport. They're like, you're going to break your back. You don't know you did. And it's just like, yeah, I know what you, because I thought the same thing. So I know what you think you're seeing, but that's not what you're seeing. I'm actually fully loaded here. My back has no tension on it. And what I'm doing is I'm using my hips and driving my hips up to then get under the bell. And then when I'm in this position, I'm in what looks like a normal, like catch under squat position. And then I stand it up. But learning to connect your elbow to your hips is really hard. So like seesaw presses are sometimes things that I'll do with guys where they like are physically pushing down, and then they can kind of get that lean into it, so that they start to learn to put one in. Or we start with just learning to clean one bell, because it takes actually a lot of flexibility out of the traps to get your elbows to your hips. And so the jerk and the long cycle are more difficult to learn in that aspect. I mean, I like really getting good at the snatch. So Sergey Rudnev was the national team coach for Russia for I think 3 or 4 years, and he was my coach for a couple of years. And I remember when asked, because I think he's 68, 65 kilos, something like that. And I'm not going to get the numbers right, because I'm a terrible numbers guy, but he was a world champ, right? And so he's swinging a 32 kilogram bell around like it's nothing. And I was like, man, how long did it take you to learn to snatch? And he looked at me and he goes, 12 years. I was like, okay, that makes
Ain't that
sense.
the truth? Ain't that the truth, man?
Yeah. So, but I like to start off with that, because I think for a lot of people, it's more comfortable, and they don't like, it's a lot easier for them to get into that way. And then to build out the jerk and the long cycle kind of over time. But I have people that a lot of my people come and they want to learn long cycle, because that's what I was proficient at.
Yeah, and that's where all the money is. You know what I mean? All those long cycle competitions on Sunday morning.
Yeah, man, it really pays it's never paid the bills. But,
hey, you know what? You can't earn it any other way but doing it. I want to open up to, if anybody, does anybody have any questions for Bill? All right. You answered everybody's question. Here we go, Ryan.
Bill, I'll ask you a question. I've followed your Instagram for a couple of years. Huge fan. Your shit is awesome.
Thanks, man.
Question: If you have somebody who has never used a kettlebell before, brand new to it, do you see any particular advantage teaching them kettlebell sport versus teaching them hardstyle? Here's why I ask. A lot of the people that I work with on a regular basis are new to working out. And while that's neither here nor there, I'm not a kettlebell sport guy, I'm a hardstyle guy. I didn't even really know what kettlebell sport was until about 4 o'clock today. So I'm asking because you seem like you have a very good handle on both. And I'm wondering if it would be any easier for a client to learn rather than hardstyle.
Well, I mean, you're going to start with your basic swing. Like you think about your clients, like most of them don't know how to hinge. So to try and make that any more complicated is kind of a pain in the ass. And so a lot of times, again, it depends upon where I'm catching my client at. And the great thing about hardstyle is that it's really pretty clear cut. And like, teaching people how to get tight is great because they have no idea. I'm just trying, but like, if I have like, there's prerequisites to using almost any tool, right? Like, can you body weight squat? Can you hinge properly from the hips? Like all of these things. And so when I consider it, like I a lot of times, like I go back to like, I'm teaching like goblet squats. I'm teaching pressing. I'm teaching, you know, I'm trying to kind of look at them and see what is sticking with them. And then kind of go in that. And then I just start to slowly sprinkle stuff in. So like, you know, like we'll start with a press from here, right? And then I'll slowly start to like make them practice a rack hold where they're going to, you know, have it rest on their hip. And we'll start, you know, you're going to hold it for 10 breaths. And now we're going to hold it for 10 breaths, but can we make that 10 breaths last X, right? Or 5, you know, can we make it last longer than what it lasted last time? And I just try and slowly like build it out. But like first is just that basic, like, but I will traditionally teach a classic swing, right? Over a pendulum swing initially. Because again, they're learning to load, they can feel the load in their hips. And then after they get that, then we'll teach the nuance of like, cause you're essentially still hitting that classic swing, except it extends back further, right? Like, so you're still hitting that point. You're not just going to like let the bell go back and be straight leg all of a sudden. You have to ride the bell back. So instead of stopping its momentum here and driving up and feeling that force, you're going to just ride it back an inch and then take it up. And so a lot of it is just, again, taking like pieces and shapes and like, let's get down that most basic hinge shape. Great. Okay, cool. Now let's, can you squat? Can you deadlift? Are there's things that you would just need for your everyday life before we start going into advanced stuff? But going back to the snatch question earlier, and part of the reason I teach the snatch is because if like, so I do teach sport style snatch, like almost always. And sometimes, you know, and again, like it varies in how I layer in the technique and load and things like that. But I like to teach, like I'll teach it also in front of a wall. And so they'll be like exactly like a fingertips distance away from the wall. And so that then when they come up, so if this, my right hand here has the bell, my left hand is going to tap the wall. And so that I'm learning to keep that bell back into me because it's going to work for the clean. It's going to work for almost everything that I'm doing. And it also translates, that rotation here and here translates into other moves. Like, so when you see me do like crossbody stuff, it's essentially, I'm having the same, I'm just loading my hips back. And then I'm having that same type of rotation as I get into it, pulling across. And so instead of it being here, like where it's going like between my legs and through, and with a snatch, it's now just going out to the side. And then I'm learning to counter it and then come back under it. And so that is a very long-winded roundabout way of how I look at it, but you gotta have your basics, right? You gotta be able to squat, lunge, deadlift, Turkish get up, like all of those things, and learn how to be tight. But then like once you learn how to be tight, a lot of times it'll also teach you how to be tall. And so once you learn to keep tall, you can then start to like realize like, oh, I only need this much tension for this. I don't need to be like, you know, this is a sub-maximal weight. So I'm not doing 1,000-pound deadlift or whatever my maximal deadlift is. I'm going to be doing this for a while. So you start to learn to create that length. And as you start to do that, you start to learn to relax more. But it always comes back to your basic, you know, moves that you would do.
Yeah, those always seem to work.
Yeah, they do. I mean, especially for general fitness.
Yeah. Susie, did you have a question?
I was just recap. You said the exhale, you focus on the breath. So to kind of work through the long cycles. So you're exhaling on every like joint movement. So the backswing, the redirection, and then under, because you kind of related to the burpee. So I was just trying to think, am I thinking exhale with every joint movement, no matter what skill it is, whether I'm just kind of like trying to.
No, that's great.
Too. So I'm just trying to kind of put the piece together.
No, that's great. So like in the long cycle, right? There's, do you want me to break down the long cycle or you want me to break down like a burpee?
I'm thinking of it so that I can maybe see if I can help with my snatch test with hardstyle, see if I can focus on exhale with the joint movements, kind of like where to incorporate it to survive it.
Right. Oh, okay, great. So with that, you're going to exhale in the backswing, right? So when the bell's back and it's loaded against you, right? So again, momentum is coming into the body. It's not actually away. So it's not like a deadlift. So there's an exhale here. And then as I start to accelerate and pull it back or accelerate and pull it back, As I punch through. If you need a rest at the top, you take another breath. And then as you drop it, in kettlebell sport, you deflect back, because now, again, bell close to hips. So the bell comes into the hips. And so there's a breath drop and then a breath to restart into the backswing, and then so on and so forth. And so that's kind of, And so I mean, basically it's kind of with every move, and you kind of got to get used to, I mean, like there's a lot of, it's not hyperventilating, but your inhale is going to come. If you exhale and you basically spill off the carbon dioxide, it makes a difference.
Okay. Thank you.
Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah. I just wanted to just confirm what I understood, just because I kind of wanted to try it out and see if it kind of helps me work through the 5 minutes and stuff like that. So I'm gonna try that. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Yeah, I'm gonna try it too. I'll take any help I can get.
Me too.
I mean? We'll see. All right, Bill, this has been awesome. I mean, I think there's been some valuable stuff here as far as like, some of the carryovers, crossovers, and understanding kettlebell sport a bit better. Where can people get at you? You got a program coming out. You got a website. You got Instagram. Tell us where we can find you.
Yeah. So one, you can find me on Instagram. My handle is Kettlebell Warrior. My website is kettlebellwarriorfitness.com. You can get it. Like those are really, I have a YouTube channel. So again, it's Kettlebell Warrior. So those are probably the best places. Instagram is where I currently post the most and put the most stuff out. Right now I have a free 7-day program, and then I have a 6-week single bell program. And that's kind of for like, it's basically kind of a, like you have experience with a kettlebell and build from there. I also have a full video called Calibrate, and I break down everything. So it's basically like if you were to come to a workshop so I teach for the IKFF, and if you were to come in, this is a lot of like what I teach, and it's all the sport basics of like, and drills and like, swings from a box in front of a wall, like all, like how to snatch in front of, and breaking it all down and breaking all those pieces down. So I have a Calibrate program, and that's the educational program. I have the Savage Shred, which is, it's kind of a beginner intermediate program. And then I'm coming out with the advanced Savage Shred, and that actually, a lot of that stuff, it is a advanced kettlebell series of where we're doing a lot of multiplanar stuff, but then we also have 2 straight up just strength days a week with the kettlebell. And again, I designed that program also like, this is, if you got one bell, this is what we got, right? And doing it from that. And so do a lot of tempo training and the strength training, keeping a lot of time under tension, because again, like if you only got one bell, what variable are you going to change, right? You have exercise, you have sets, you got reps, you have the weight, you have rest, and you have your tempo. And changing any one of those 6 variables completely can change the outcome of the exercises that you're doing. And so since weight is static for, because I'm assuming that like you only have one bell, then we work a lot of tempo.
Got it. Yeah, that'll definitely do it, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Roger, you got anything else for my man Bill here?
No, not right now. I'm gonna think about some stuff. I might fire some stuff off a little bit later. Mostly interested in a lot of the bell path. You got my wheels turning. But no, I'm good right now.
All right.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, we may have to have you on again, Bill, and just talk about the path of the bell. It'll be like sort of like some Zen Buddhism, the way type stuff. All right,
next
brother.
Time, what I'll do is I'll get in a spot where I can at least like swing a bell and talk about it.
I like that. Yeah, that'd be
sometimes
awesome.
it makes more sense that way.
Yeah, I'd be down for that, and I know Roger would be too. And you know what? We appreciate you coming on, brother. And we'll actually catch you next time and see some more stuff from you. Thanks a lot, brother.
All right, hey guys, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a great one, everybody. Thanks for listening.
See ya.
Bye.